Hey, George Webb here in Pasadena. One more stop, one more fun fact. This is where Sirhan was recruited in 1964, just in case Bobby Kennedy ran for president in 1964 at Pasadena City College by none other than most probably William Herman again, most probably when he was at JPL here. And also a young man named Robert Allen Hale and his twin brother and his father, who was a sniper for the CIA and the FBI, named I.B. Hale. You can read my series at georgewebb.substack.com. And you can read all about it. I have a new tab for it. So it's out there. Hail of Bullets. Read Hail of Bullets.
Hello. Welcome to Neighborhood News. George Webb Investigates. May 9th, 2025. Hello, George.
Hey, we got the FNG. We got the new guy. We got Terry here. We got Terry on board. Hey, yep. Terry.
I'm Aaron. We have Terry and Mark here in studio here today in Neighborhood News Studio here in Lambertville, Michigan. George coming to us from the West Coast. I think still on the West Coast, so early for him out there. And Sirhan.
Yeah. So for Terry may not be familiar with all those kind of subjects we talk about, but what we do is we take the stories that come out, like the RFK documents dumping yesterday, 6,000 documents, and we go through them. And instead of telling everybody you need to go through these by yourself and try to figure all these things out yourself, we go in and we pick out the diamonds and then the juice. And the juice of the RFK drop was that Sirhan, who we think of as this waiter, and I remember when this happened because I was 8, but with this waiter that was just in this kitchen, and they decided to not go through the hotel, the Ambassador Hotel. They decided to go through the kitchen, and this crazy waiter who hated Israel just decided to shoot Bobby Kennedy. And there's no evidence that supports that theory whatsoever. Sirhan was 3 to 5 feet facing Bobby Kennedy. He had a 9-shot pistol. 13 shots were fired from the acoustics. The shot was in the back of the right ear. So you think the first Kennedy assassination had a magic bullet, with it going through Kennedy this way and then stopping in the air and then turning and going through Connolly and then his body and then his wrist and all that, and then came out perfect, the Robert Allen Hale of bullets, the perfect magic bullet? You think that one was a magic bullet? This one, I'm facing the guy 3 to 5 feet away. Remember, somebody grabs his hand after the first shot and there's bullet holes all over the ceiling, right? Mm-hmm.
Right.
But somehow magically that goes in the back of his ear. Plus he has powder burns within an inch of his ear. This is the coroner report, not my report. And then he's also shot in the back. So the first shot in the back, the guy catches him. They didn't do any forensics on the gun. And then he falls back. And as he falls back, then he shoots him in the ear. So it's an old assassin's trick, right? And Bobby Kennedy even clutched the tie of the person that was shooting him. Why they wouldn't test that gun is unknown. But the key thing that people didn't know from the documents is, when did this relationship start between the United States and Sirhan? And it actually didn't start in 1968. It actually started in a recruiting visit to Pasadena City College, where you saw me there, in 1964. And the visitor was involved with JPL, which is the Joint Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, and they were working with the Rand Corporation on missile defense. And back then, missile defense was a big deal because it was a Cold War, and they thought Russia's going to kill us. So we were trying to do missile defense at that time with these Nike missiles. And Sharon Tate, her father, worked for these Nike missiles. So the big theory here from these documents that came out, this is just one document, I've written about it, is that they decided to, if Bobby Kennedy was going to run in 64, and he was making all these trips out to California, like fundraising, we'll have a crazy guy shoot him in the hotel, in the Ambassador Hotel. And or wherever the campaign event was going to be, as a waiter, somebody who could get close serving food and so forth. But he didn't run in 64, so there was no need to kill him. But then he did run in 68, so they reactivated that plan. So that's the whole. That's
Here,
what
I'll read from our favorite, the LA Times.
Yeah.
This Soon Shong is LA Times, right?
Yes, he is.
After graduating, he enrolled in Pasadena City College in the fall of 1963, but he had poor attendance. The next year, he began coming home immediately after classes to care for his sister Ida, who had leukemia. She died in March 1965 at the age of 29. Oh, wow, that's sad. 3 months later, he dropped out of college. So at least that's the story is, well, we don't need you anymore, Sirhan. He didn't run, so go back to whatever you were doing.
Yep. With Sirhan, and I'm trying to remember, but wasn't he convicted of murdering Bobby Kennedy, and he got the death penalty? And for the same reason now that Manson ended up, they stopped that Sirhan wasn't executed either because of the constitutionality of the death penalty. I'm trying to think if that wasn't going on, where he should have been executed, had his conviction been carried out, but he's still alive, like Charles Manson.
Yep, that's right. Both the Mansons and Manson and Sirhan got the death penalty, but the California Supreme Court ruled against it. And I think that was the promise, which is if you keep quiet about what happened, you won't be executed.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating stuff. Well, in addition to that, so he was theoretically a Palestinian, although they say Palestinian, could have been Syrian, could have been Lebanese. He was not Pakistani. So if we could move a little bit here to Pakistan, we got Pakistan and India in the news.
Well, I want to go real quick though.
Okay, you want to stay there?
Just because Sirhan, it's 1956, and I'm thinking there was a lot of turmoil in 1956 in the Middle East.
56?
In 56, it was
64.
Nasser, whatever there was. I don't know. Was
several wars. We're going to go over the birth of Israel. One of our Ospreys did the film that was on NPR. So, Birth of a Nation. We're going to go through it. But yes,
Abdel Nasser. Did he come to power then? Something in Egypt.
Yep. And he closed the Suez Canal, if you remember. And then there was an action right after World War II, and again in '56, when Nasser came to power, they closed the Suez Canal.
So that precipitated the immigration, desire, something like that. I'm wondering if the instability and was what prompted the family to come to the United States.
I'm not sure if they were displaced from the Nakba after World War II or not. That's a good thing to check. Something says you're right. Something in the background here says you're right. So. So we've got a troll already. Hey, Terry, say something so that everybody knows that we're not ignoring you. Where were you in 68?
I was a seed. I was not here yet, but it's interesting because I just watched a special on Vietnam and it went over Kennedy and everything too. So it's interesting that that's what you're discussing today. I actually watched the video of him laying there when he was shot, and that was a time of turmoil for everyone. So to see how deep this really goes is interesting, which is interesting too, because I've only done a few shows so far, and a lot of this stuff, we did the 9/11, 9/11 yesterday, and as I was reading the intro to Terrorland, I was telling the two guys here that, I was there working when that happened, and I know I'm changing subjects here.
That's cool.
To read that after it had taken place and to know that I had seen that, and you said before, you were around when Kennedy got shot, it kind of stirred up a lot of emotion. And I think that a lot of times people fail to, they believe what they see, they believe what the media presents, and you get a chance to delve into it, and you see how you were slighted. And I think that's the biggest thing that's going on with me right now as I'm listening to you and watching your shows and just talking with these guys here. And it's like light bulb moment, holy shit, this is what happened. And it actually teared me up a little bit. I had to stop reading for a minute because you're reading these personal accounts and you're like, wow, 3,000 people gone and pointing fingers, and here we are looking at Kennedy, and it's happened so long ago, but people can still uncover the truth, and it still blows me away that wow, this could be looked at many, many different ways. So I'm interested to see where this journey takes me and how much knowledge I can soak up. So I appreciate you taking me under your wing as an intern, and yeah, thanks guys. So
the troll can,
here I am.
A lot more listening is needed than
sure.
speaking in this research community, despite what the troll might think. Even George himself listens more than he speaks. You'd be surprised how much listening and soaking in he does when we're all having charrettes. Just a big sponge, I mean, it's all about listening, and then it's sort of like this. The shows are just the output of a lot of listening, right? So
I know
this is what it is.
A man that says a very important figure in my life. He taught me to practice the pause, and I think a lot of us need to practice that pause a little bit more. So
yep.
Well said. Well, I think the whole audience wants to get to know you better, and
thank you.
He'll be around.
Here we go.
He'll
guys.
be likened to Andy. People already, he's the new Andy, so we'll have to introduce him to Andy. He's never met Andy actually, but
okay.
Well,
let's take those.
KRP in Cincinnati.
Yeah, there you go. That was a good show.
WKRP in Cincinnati.
So let's move over to the Middle East. We've got the Pakistan-India thing. I think to sum up a lot of what you did during the week, talking about how a lot of these events, a lot of these kinetic events are really about pipelines, or business. Often the business is pipelines, especially in that part of the world. And the attack in Pakistan, this Palgram attack that occurred on, I believe it was April 22nd, where 5 Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists entered into the north of India in the Kashmir region there and killed 20 something people, I think 23 people. And it obviously then has now led to responses from India. This is certainly the area of the world everybody's looking at because it's gotten so kinetic over there. And I don't know. What do you think, George? I mean, it seems to me a lot like October 7th, where conveniently these terrorists were able to get in, make, have a bloodbath. And now all the wheels are in motion to move territories the way that the deep state, the New World Order, wants it for their pipeline purposes. Maybe take it from there, huh? What do you think?
And for Terry's benefit, I'll kind of do a recap over the last 8 years. We've been following this situation in the contested region of Kashmir between India and Pakistan for 8 years. So it's kind of like we've been predicting this war for 8 years, and through a spy ring that it was happening in the U.S. Congress. So if you look at this is one time when I say you can do the close-up of me, Aaron.
Okay.
Because I have the pipelines behind me. And we're going to get to the Pope in a second. I've spent a lot of time in Bronzeville. I have a lot of information about Chicago. I have a lot of information about La Raza and the whole recruiting thing and the whole Trump derangement syndrome. So we're going to get there. Don't worry. But for Terry's benefit, there was 2 main pipelines. One's called the Tappy. I'll try to move myself here.
Oh no, I'll get some graphics going here too.
But you see here the Tappy pipeline,
right,
and then you see the IPI or the IPI pipeline.
Here, we'll bring you back actually. Okay, good. Yeah.
And the fundamental theory here, just so you know, I am the one speaking. The fundamental theory here is let's go ahead and get all the money for draining the old Soviet Union. Turkmenistan right there used to be a part of the old Soviet Union. Of course, Afghanistan was a war, so we could drain that with Osama bin Laden. and then drain it down here into Karachi. See,
Here, I think
Karachi.
I got it here on our share screen too.
Okay, great. That's
hopefully
good.
that'll be a little easier. You can scooch up if you want.
Yeah. So the big idea here is let's not dig a big public pipeline where we cut the ribbon with the 56-inch pipeline. Let's dig these self-tunneling pipelines or pilot systems where you can't actually even see sort of the boring company, where you can't actually even see the pipeline being dug. You dig a 4-inch pipeline, and then you dig an 8-inch pipeline. And if they don't find out the 8-inch pipeline, you dig a foot pipeline and then a 2-foot pipeline. You keep making the pipeline bigger and bigger, and you keep draining the area of all of its natural resources, and you keep the war going. So no one knows that you're doing this until it's all gone, and then you end the war. And this is the old put a pin in the bottom of an egg and drain the egg. Everyone who's buying the eggs still sees the eggs and thinks the eggs are full of yolk and whatnot. No, you've drained it all out. And the drain plug, if you will, in this story was Karachi. And then the other thing that we predicted was through Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and their connections with their father and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard with Soleimani, that they were going to build this Iranian pipeline so that you could go from the Persian Gulf all the way over to, we said, China. This is why it's important, because you see where it stops in Mulan there, the pipeline, where the green and red intersect. We said no. The server we identified, the Crook server, was in the contested region going up toward China, up in the upper right-hand corner. That's where the Crook server was. That's where the terabytes were coming from the U.S. Congress, from Imran Awan. That's where the bioweapons lab was for Rahm Emanuel, the Faisalabad bioweapons lab. We said that they would use bioweapons to clear a corridor to China. On paper, the reason why everyone in the International Bank and the Asian Bank and the Islamic Development Bank, and the reason why all these people were throwing money at it, is because it had the I in it. The I was India, as the largest democracy of 1.4 billion people, is like, oh, this is great. We'll build all these pipelines because it's all going to India. No. At the last minute, you throw a curveball to everybody, literally, and you go to China, right? You go through, this is what we've been saying for 8 years, that they're not going to do the last leg, which is the I in TAPI and the I in IPI. They're going to do a curveball and take it to China. And that's why the insiders of the Atlantic Council that we had identified are going to, right there at Multan, is where you
swing it north at Multan.
Yep.
That's where all the relationships between the Pakistani generals and the Chinese come in.
Yep.
Remember, who was our guy? Who was the guy, the Pakistani general? Remember Papa Johnny?
Well, there was Hawk, HAQ.
There was this guy. There's this Pakistani general who owned a bunch of Papa John's franchises.
Well, there's Javid. There's these other frontmen. These are intelligence officers they send to the United States because their English skills are good. But the killers, the ISI controls Pakistan. It's a CIA cutout intelligence organization. Kofor Black. We've gone over all the names of all the people. John Brennan, and the people who are actually the president of Pakistan are just figureheads. Both Bhuttos were killed. The father was killed. The daughter was killed in front of everyone as soon as they bourgeois. Bajwa. But and Imran Khan, when he was head of the PPP, they just basically, just gave him no power. And then they finally put him in prison. The CIA runs this, and the way you can tell there's a problem. Here's the Kandahar. Is that Osama bin Laden's oil company was right across from Unocal, which was the Union Oil Company that had the pipe that was doing the pipelines. This is Enron, folks. This is why Building 7 collapses, to speak to Terry talking about being working there on site. This is why Building 7 collapses, because they were doing the investigation into Enron. This is all the stuff of the secret pipeline.
The Saudi Bin Laden Group, Global Holding Company. Oh, this is a different one, huh? Maybe.
No, they had several companies. One, they did a pipeline in Sudan to try to get to the sea, to the Indian Ocean, the Arabian Sea, I guess it would be before it's the Indian Ocean. But this is what it's always about. This is why the wars always take 20 years, because it takes at these smaller pipe diameters, right? You're not talking about the big 56-inch, right? Or the 48-inch pipelines. You're talking about a smaller 24-inch, or maybe they get up to 36-inch, but you cannot push the volume through that you normally could. There's different ways they have now of forcing it through, but you need 20 years to drain the oil fields and pipelines, right? This is what Getty did off the shore of California here with Tidewater. This is the secret of how you make a lot of money by partnering up with the military industrial complex.
They assure the profit, right?
Keep your eyes on the pipelines. Here's all
Extend
the
war. Here's all the oil. Boom.
different routes.
You follow the pipelines, you're pretty much going to be able to foresee history.
Wow.
You're going to be able to foretell the future, and we've done this over and over. This isn't the first time we've been right on these things, but what's more important is that we get the information out, and Terry, it's people like you who become citizen journalists that take the information in, add your information to it,
Yes.
and then do your book or your broadcasts, etc.
Yes, sir.
The Terry show and the Terry book will be coming at you, no doubt. As soon as we get the printing presses going again here, maybe we'll start printing your books again here, George, or maybe some Substack compendiums. Probably the best thing would be compendiums, or like your series is on Substack. For folks who aren't aware, George has been bringing together a lot of his work into, what do you call them, series is on Substack, right?
Yeah.
And so you can follow along with any number of series to try to catch up.
Go to Dave's comments here about Joanne Herring, because a lot of books, there's a Long Island serial killer case.
Mm-hmm.
Joanne Herring, all the people that are involved on the war side. Joanne Herring is the person who, in the movie Charlie Wilson's War, is played by Julia Roberts, and Tom Hanks plays the congressman who's pushing this secret war. This is when Osama bin Laden was on our side, okay? But you'll find that she's married to the guy who runs Enron. It was so thinly veiled that this
She's
was
still alive.
Yeah.
Houston, Texas,
Originally
right
from
there.
Houston, she's best known for influencing policy through her long association and political relationship with President of Pakistan, Zia-ul Haq, who was the president from Pakistan from 1977 to 1988.
And Haq is the guy who's killing. Haq is definitely the guy who killed Bhutto. I think Haq also is the guy who transferred the money for the hijackers, because, as Terry said, you don't want to say to the American people, hey, we've identified all these huge oil finds and all these huge gas finds that we would like the American people to pay for the pipelines.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's not going to play too well. But if you show them crashing into the buildings and saying they did it and they need to pay for it, the revenge motive will then, you think it's just revenge, you're going to get Osama bin Laden. But what you end up doing is paying for the pipeline development for 20 years, plus all sorts of development and war material. Imran Awan's father was involved in the Pakistani ordnance factory, so they developed all kinds of drone warfare. They provided all kinds of uniforms for NATO, machine guns, ammunition, missiles, etc. So it's a huge profit-taking enterprise, as well as, but you have to create what we call a mass formation psychosis. You have to create the shocking thing that affects you emotionally, so that you'll say they need to pay for what they did.
I guess I'm not wrong when I say war is money, right?
Yeah, war is a racket, I think, is how Smedley Butler said it, and it certainly is. Another Dave Underdown comment here with Bechtel of California with the Trans-Arabian pipeline. This same follow the pipeline strategy works in the Middle East as well. We've talked about, I have a series on Substack called The Braverman Prophecy, which says they're going to have basically an Israeli-controlled Suez Canal, to Mark's point, which is We don't want to be, you know, where we could be held hostage by Egypt with the canal. Yeah. And the first Trans-Arabian pipeline you see went through Iraq, followed the border along the top of Saudi Arabia, but then it goes up through Syria. But the new, if you go back to the map there for a second, that involved two countries in the Trans-Arabian pipeline. I believe it went through Lebanon and went through Syria. And we had the war in 2014 to overthrow Syria, and we were not successful. See how it goes through Syria there. But where the new Trans-Arabia pipeline is straight over to the Gulf of Aqaba, right, in the Red Sea. And then that means you can take oil from the Persian Gulf and never leave any other country except Saudi Arabia. This is over by, you can see the Gulf of Aqaba is where the line, you see the line there between Israel and Egypt.
Folks will also remember the Gulf of Aqaba from Lawrence of Arabia.
Right.
They had to circle all the way around in Lawrence of Arabia to get them at Aqaba because the cannons were pointed only to the sea. Right, remember that part of Lawrence of Arabia, right? The cannons were only pointed to the sea, so they had to do that long trek, and that's why Lawrence had to go through.
He had to make a deal with the Arabs to go in that way,
right? Making peace all the way through northern Saudi Arabia or whatever, or southern Saudi Arabia, whatever it is there, and then they got Aqaba. Then they run in with the horses in Aqaba there at the end of the movie, if I'm not mistaken, right?
They do.
Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, yeah. So,
sorry, just fun facts. We love fun facts.
So I in my Braverman prophecy that I wrote in 2017, I said the new Suez Canal will roughly bisect the Gaza, and therefore they'll have to roll up the Gaza, at least half of it. So half of it will be a Palestinian side and half will be an Israeli side. And I was wrong. People say I never say I'm wrong. I was wrong. They're rolling up the whole thing. And they may make the canal all the way over to the border of Israel and Egypt. And they may displace all the people who are in Gaza right now to work on the pipeline. There's a lot of mountains in there. But the canal is a lot more engineering challenge. There's currently a pipeline already, right? That's the Ben Gurion Canal that people talk about. I see the Ben Gurion Canal is going to be more over toward the Gaza Strip. So then it's a natural defensive barrier as well.
Yeah, we're going to do a few. There's, to look it up online, there's a lot of different maps with a very subtle, very important yet subtle little shift at the end. How far left are we going to go? How far south are we going to go, rather, right? I mean, definitely the line to Aqaba is a sure thing down there at the bottom, but really it's just how close to Egypt, how far into Gaza are we going to go with that northern part of the pipeline?
And there already is
a lot of images for me to choose from. I'll just keep throwing them up here as best I can. Yeah, sorry.
Continue. I see 55 billion? Was that
$55 billion project for the Ben Gurion Canal? Yeah, sounds about right. I'm sure that's.
I think it's going to. There will be use of some very heavy duty boring company technology to go through those hills. There'll be part of it will be a tunnel for ships and so forth. It's going to be twice the width of the Suez Canal. And there'll be two-way traffic as opposed to some parts of the Suez Canal are only one-way traffic in some parts. And if you remember, I wrote that book, The Good Ship Evergreen. And it was when they turned one ship sideways is all it takes to block the Suez Canal. So I predict there'll be some kind of Good Ship Evergreen event as soon as the Ben Gurion Canal is complete.
Here, I'll Mark wants to share some scripture here, and then we'll transition even to our video. So Zephaniah 2, chapter 4, or chapter 2, number 4 here. For Gaza shall be forsaken, and Ashkelon a desolation. They shall drive out Ashdod at the noonday, and Ekron shall be rooted up. Woe unto the inhabitants of the sea coast, the nation of the Chetherites. The word of the Lord is against you, O Canaan, the land of the Philistines. I will even destroy thee, that there shall be no inhabitant. And the sea coast shall be a dwellings and cottages for shepherds and folds of flocks. And the coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah. They shall feed thereupon, in the houses of Ashkelon shall they lie down in the evening, for the Lord their God shall visit them and turn away their captivity. Should I stop there? Is
That's
that good enough?
Yeah,
You
just
know,
made my
it's
point, but
the sea coast, you know, where, I mean,
All goes back.
I don't know, you know, no doubt there are many in Israel who will be waving this in their hands as the things unfold over there, for better or worse, or, you know, neutral, whatever you want to call
I
it.
guess
That went really deep, guys.
Yeah, that's what it's there. I mean, this, I don't know, you know, I mean, we
That just
don't,
happened?
we're just certainly, you know, making the audience aware that the scripture does exist. There are no doubt some people who, you know,
the minor
take it seriously,
prophets,
and some who
there
don't,
are
right?
A lot of major facts in the minor prophets.
But if we could, let's use
Mind blown right now, guys, as the intern. What just happened?
so let's use this occasion as we discuss, you know, the Jewish prophets, to transition to a great series that we wanted to be sure to highlight for the audience. We'll be diving into this more as we go along, doing some watch parties. A researcher, a fellow individual in the research community. I don't know if we need to name them or whatever, but a friend of a researcher here is
3 South Africans, and it's a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter. They're all artists, and this is their film. So here we go.
It's a long film. Well, I mean, this would be many hours. We'll probably just watch a few minutes of section 1, but you can see here there are, you know, there's 8 different approximately 1 hour shows here that you can watch on YouTube. It's called A Nation is Born by Neville Morrison. And we'll try
And
to put
he's
a
still
link.
alive, and I'm in contact with him, as well as the wife, as well as his daughter and his granddaughter on this. They're picking up the project where he left off. There are also 2 stories here. One who we think is the grandfather of Elon Musk. It's called Gold. And then there's another, we think maybe the grandfather of Peter Thiel. It's called Shout at the Devil. He did those 2 films with Marlon Brando and Roger Moore of when he was doing James Bond films. So he didn't do just documentary films, but he also did the Hollywood type films, both shot in Africa. So all this is shot in Africa.
We're getting a little scrolling here. I don't know if.
Well, I wondered if the Haganah or some of these Jewish intelligence agencies were telling the real story of Haganah. We're telling the real story of Irgun. This is the real intelligence story here. And so, people don't want to hear this, but all of the people that are the dual citizens in our Congress are descendants and relatives. And the people involved in 9/11, for instance, with Dov Zakheim and so forth, and Danny Rothschild, and these top intelligence officers are all descendants of these folks. And so it's not just Israeli history here, it's how our history is being affected by the Israeli history.
Absolutely. And, you know, the Jewish thing, let's call it, here we go, we got a little video here. The Jewish thing is pretty hot right now, especially in alternative media, you know, and we do have a lot of information and a lot of research in this area. You know, Ian Carroll, Candace Owens, Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan. I mean, you take any cross section of the alternative media right now, and everybody's chiming in somewhere on the Jewish thing. And I think we've tried to sort of stay out of it, just because it's so much noise and so little information, unfortunately. And it's like, where do we step into these waters? But at some point we will have to do our good Mossad, bad Mossad show and really kind of get it out there, because I mean, the Jews, Israel is such a tired and not informative way to address the situation, you know. I mean, like, for, you know, the thing I always say is, it's not the Jews, it's the Jewish Colonial Trust. The Jewish Colonial Trust was the birth child of Theodore Herzl. Theodore Herzl was the godfather, the father. His picture was on the wall over Ben Gurion when they inaugurated the state of Israel. You'll learn all about that if you watch this video, Israel, A Nation is Born, you know. And so the picture of Herzl, who has already died decades before, is on the wall in front of Ben Gurion, you know, when they're inaugurating the state in 1947. And it was all about the Jewish Colonial Trust, the company that they set up in Switzerland back in 1902 at the Zionist Congress to do business. And they're doing business. They've been doing business. When we look at, the Rails brothers and Caputo and Fink over there at BlackRock and KKNR with Kravis. I mean, it's a never-ending list of people who are very clearly in the Jewish Colonial Trust or owners of shares and companies that have been handed down and traded since the Jewish Colonial Trust. And I think that's who we're dealing with. And I think if a lot of researchers out there, I don't want to, shake a stick at Candace or Ian or anybody out there, because a lot of them are doing great work and they're uncovering a lot of things, but like, just stop saying the Jews. Say Jewish Colonial Trust, and you'll be a lot closer to the truth. It's not just the Jews. I'm a Jew. They didn't include me in any of their plans. I don't get any of their money. I know a lot of other Jews. They're not included in the plans or any of the money. It's about businesses. It's about keeping businesses close to home and trading them amongst themselves. And that's what we're dealing with here, and then you get into all the Israel stuff and fighting over Israel. And there's so many Israels inside of Israel. Israel has been tearing itself apart.
Not all Israel is Israel.
Yeah. And so, but like you're saying, George, the Irgun, the Lehi, the Stern gang, we used to do a lot of research.
Frankists.
Well, they're there too, but there's a lot to it. And this series is excellent and gives lots of great background information. I don't know. It's almost too long of a series for us to.
Yeah, I think we'll just generally introduce it today. And, given the emotional impact of 9/11, what Terry said, I felt the same way. And the troll was mentioning that I looked into joining the IDF and I was a little too old. But I did go to New York, and I did go to, the Woolworth building, which looked down into the holes. And I went on the year anniversary on September 11th because it affected me. I wanted, as a Christian, to also fight for Israel because I thought that was the front line of democracy. So I think we all get involved in these things. When my kids got old enough, I looked at them, doing medical school in Israel. So we believe in Israel as a democracy, as an aircraft carrier democracy in the Middle East. But what we're saying is we don't want to get so pro-Zionist that it takes us into World War III, or it controls our history through these mass formation psychosis events, right? We want to separate the heavy-duty Zionists, the Dov Zakheims and the Danny Rothschilds. We want to identify them and say, this isn't the direction we want the world to go in. I'm not saying I don't want, Israel. I want Israel to have safe borders, but I don't want from the Nile to the Euphrates, because that's going to cause World War III.
And it's okay. You go, Mark. Yeah.
I was just, when World War I ended, the promise was the freedom and the self-determination of all of these subject people that had been involved in empires. And like this over in the part of the world was under the Ottoman Empire, and then, but you had these various empires. And like, even now, is this, the trouble that we're seeing in the Middle East, is this like a coalescing of an attempt to try and maybe reestablish the Ottoman Empire, and then are the Habsburgs trying to reestablish, something in, Europe? And the various, but are these empires trying to reassert themselves? And because even you have Yugoslavia, to create this Slavic nation, out of World War I, and then it was the first one to kind of like balkanize back into the separate countries again. So anyhow, I'm just wondering, if we're seeing forces trying to reestablish these empires.
Well, I think there's some claim. Kissinger was famous for going around and having these nobility parties where he had Prince Bernhard at the various Bilderberg groups and telling everybody that they were God's descendant to bring Christianity or whatever to their country. And we need to reestablish you. We need to put your family back on, if not overtly, at least covertly, back on the throne, right? And that way we don't have to worry about this democracy thing. And I think that did happen. And I think Kissinger told the Habsburg story to the old Ottoman Empire people, and then he told the Juncker story to the Eastern, the Poles and Peter Struck, and he told the Charlemagne stories to the people in southern France. And in Italy they told the resurgent Roman Empire stories. So I think this is all knitted together through intelligence. As far as what's happening in these world events, I do think it's controlled out of our State Department through Israeli intelligence mainly, and NATO intelligence. We also have to look at the Pope's intelligence network now that we have a new Chicago mob Pope.
Oh my
I'll have to
God!
get in that. Here, I just want to say we'll close the door on the Ottoman Empire thing just with this picture. I wanted to highlight. This was on Twitter recently. This picture is floating around. These are the descendants, the young members of the Osmanoglu family who ruled the Ottoman Empire for 700 years, and they look very Aryan. They don't look like who you would think the descendants and the rulers of the Ottoman Empire would be.
What do
and
Turks
so it's
look like? They would be Turkish, probably.
I guess, but I mean, it's just you feel like the Nazis or somebody in Europe really tried to get their.
These came from the colony in Argentina. This is a
Just walked off the set of 90210.
this is the colony in Argentina. This is Eichmann's offspring, or maybe not Eichmann, maybe Bolshevik's offspring here.
I think the current lands of the former Ottoman Empire would not necessarily go to wouldn't be too excited to be ruled by this family again at this point and be like it's.
Well, I don't necessarily know that
they're not down with that.
I don't know that
yeah.
you'll necessarily have kings again, but you'll have these administrators or principals of sorts that will run it as if it was the empire, or use the basis of what was the empire to create this new administration to service the subject lands.
It gives you the appearance of legitimacy, right? Even if you aren't elected, you like they did in the CIA did in Japan, is you have an emperor. You just create a religion out of whole cloth, and now you have everyone dying for the emperor, and we get the world. Then the U.S. inherits all the oil fields in Southeast Asia from China. So, yeah, it gives you the appearance of legitimacy, whether you got elected or not.
So if I could just one more highlighting here of Israel Birth of a Nation documentary. So this is a kibbutz. I paused it right here. This is, we always say the word kibbutz, or it comes up a lot for those who aren't familiar with the kibbutz. Kibbutzes were a big thing in Israel. Israel was really built by its kibbutzes, which, and we often say our sharets are kind of like a kibbutz.
Yeah.
Where we all come together and, it's sort of like, I don't want to call it, too Marxist in a way, but it is sort of like each according to their abilities from each of their assets. Everybody comes and shares in what they can, does what they can. Folks who maybe have a little bit more money will buy a little bit more food. Folks who may not have a lot of money might cook more of the food. That is, kind of how our charrettes go, is kibbutz style, you might say, right?
You had to get Russia through to approve the statehood of Israel through the United Nations, and they were a member of the Security Council.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in time, 1948, like Israel was fair game, that it could become a Soviet socialist republic.
Right,
and
that's,
they were working, so they had skin in the game at that time, and the kibbutzes were their attempt to bring Marxism into the new land.
And that's, I guess, my point, right? Is that like we are very supportive and loving and cherishing of Israel being the democracy in the Middle East that we should support and stand behind and give 110% of our support to, because having a democracy there is such an important, great thing, and being an ally for America is awesome. However, there is a very thick socialist, communist thread through Israel from before its founding, at its founding, and on to today. And we're not cool with that, and that's there. And so there's multiple Israels. There's the conservative, small r republicanism, democracy type Israel that we like. And even though we are kind of kibbutz-like, people, when we all hang out, we're not into the communist socialist roots of Israel. And they're both there, and they've been there for a long time. And to some people, it kind of proves that God is in charge of it all and the Bible is real, because wow, how are these two forces still at play against each other in the Holy Land? It's a magical thing. It's amazing. But it's not just like, oh, we support Israel. We do understand that when we listen to Candace Owens, we listen to Ian Carroll, we listen to the people who are very critical of Israel. That's what we want to pull at with them, is that socialist thread that's been there the whole time. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is the bathwater, you might say.
And to a certain degree, this all started with Eric Braverman on a kibbutz.
Here's the kibbutz, yep.
On the kibbutz of Mark Zuckerberg's half-brother, who's a rabbi. And when Kolomoisky was hiding Eric Braverman from death,
yeah, that's right,
in Tel Aviv, he moved to a kibbutz about 30 miles away, and Eric Braverman grew the beard and so forth, and lived to go on to run Eric Schmidt's foundations here in California. So,
well, she would suggest that the Zionist socialist movements are still very powerful and still part of the deep state that we're fighting against. And so it's important to track them. And yeah, you're right, because the guy you were tracking ran away to a kibbutz. George is hot on this guy's heels back in 2017, and they had to ship him out of America because George and Task Force were going to find him through their great citizen journalism, and they shipped him off to a kibbutz. So I mean,
and we said Gaza would be rolled up with bioagents, and it wasn't. They tried, but it didn't work, and then they went with the old conventional method. But then we said it would be tried in Ukraine, and that's what's happening right now in Ukraine. So and I think biowarfare is certainly part of that. So speaking of clandestine spy organizations, you want to get to the Chicago Mob Pope here in the last 10 minutes?
We'll do the Chicago Mob Pope, and then we'll wrap it up there. So amazing thing, they actually nominated a pope from Chicago, or elected a pope, I shouldn't say nominated.
And it just so happens I get lucky sometimes. I spent a lot of time in Brownsville, and I was working with companies that were shredding metals, and that heavy metal south side is where a lot of the metal recycling is in Chicago. It's in Brownsville. And there was all these churches, and I'm like, bringing in illegal immigrants. And I'm like, well, this is kind of crazy. What's going on here? So I started doing research in La Raza, which is the right. it means like our land, like they took California for us. So that means we need to take back all of the United States. That's what La Raza believes. From Hispanics. And this is the hotbed. This is the Chicago mob hotbed. This is where Burnham, remember when they had the Great White World's Fair, and Burnham, the architect who rebuilt all of Chicago after the Chicago fire, he was the big architect. This is Unidos.
This is La Raza now. They've rebranded themselves as Unidos US,
run by Benassi's wife.
United States' largest Latino nonprofit advocacy organization. It advocates in favor of progressive public policy changes, including immigration reform, a path to citizenship for migrants, and reduced deportations. And they were formerly known as National Council of La Raza, NCLR.
Yep. And Pietro Benassi's wife ran this organization at the UN. And again, nobody, I speak Spanish. I made sure my kids spoke Spanish. Nobody spends more time, right? Because of the trolls are going to attack. But nobody spends more time with people that are undocumented than me, right? I just interviewed somebody 2 nights ago, spent the whole night with them, interviewed him from being in the United States. I'm not going to say his name, but because I don't want him to get picked up. But I am close to people, and I understand the plight. I worked with the senators on Capitol Hill for the first Dreamer Act to get the Dreamers, these kids speak English better than most kids do in the school. They're the translators for their abuelas and so forth. They should get citizenship if they've been here more than 5 years. We should go back to the Dreamer Act, right? But we do have to deal with some legal means rather than it all being illegal, because it's going to take down the economy. And plus, when you have a lot of illegals, you also have the clandestine networks, the spy networks. And this Chicago mob pope, you can do industrial actions and sabotage and espionage and take down a president. We did this in Eastern Europe, as Mark mentioned, in Yugoslavia. And we did this in Rome, in Italy, after World War II. This is the Gladio all over again with this Pope. So we just have to call it out. We have to call out who Pietro Benassi is. We have to call out who his wife is. this is a takedown of Trump. This isn't just rhetoric. Everyone's saying, oh, this is Pope has TDS. No, he doesn't just have TDS. He has a spy network that can take down your factory.
Wow.
That's what he has. And that's why he is a factor to be reckoned with. And we have to start looking at Pietro Benassi's spy network and his wife's network. Otherwise, we're going to wonder where these explosions, these industrial explosions, are coming from.
Well, maybe one day they'll be able to pick a pope just based on, doctrine and liturgy or whatever the words would be, like actually like what matters to the religion rather than just having all of their decisions be politicized. Because this is 3 in a row. Ratzinger, Francis, now this guy is just pope for politics.
Well, everybody's been a rat since Ratzinger, and Ratzinger was the dark shadow, the deep fixer inside the Vatican for the popes before that as well. You go all the way back to Mussolini's pope, and you go all the way back to Hitler's pope with the Piuses. Benassi's have been in there, and this spy network has been around. Remember, this has been around since the creation. The Catholic Church is basically, I mean, if you really want to go back to the roots, it's the Roman Empire saying we need something that is more PR palatable, right? We need something to placate the people and calm the people down. And so the Roman Empire turns into the Roman Catholic Church. There's papers to support this now that are just coming out.
Mark has said that in previous shows, even where he's like, the Pope is Caesar.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if you really go back to it and you follow the thread the whole way,
the College of Cardinals being the inner sanctum of the old the Praetorian.
The Sanhedrin. Remember the Sanhedrin? I always thought that's what the Cardinals were.
The Cardinals are the Sanhedrin now, or like the current Cardinals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the sovereign military order was imaged in the Pope's guard, the Helvetian Guard. I can't remember. All of a sudden, the name escapes me.
The Jesuits?
No, there was a guard of non-English speaking or non-Italian speaking
Praetorian Guard.
Praetorian Guard, yeah, the Praetorian Guard was all these huge Helvetians, guys like me, right, that were around the Pope because they didn't want anybody to kill the Pope, and before that, the Roman Emperor. So the same sort of thing as the sovereign military order in Malta is that same idea for the Pope, that he should have a military guard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fascinating stuff.
Well, the last Pope didn't do it that way. He was in an open car. I mean, when you look at it realistically,
I think I like Francis. I mean, even though he funded the Jesuit spy network, and Benassi went wild on him funding the spy network.
Yeah, sure enough.
He himself was a good guy.
Very humble. I mean, he didn't live extravagant lifestyle. He was very humble, and it'd be interesting to see what happens with the next one, because I know they agreed on a lot, right? As far as
this, I mean, I think you want a Pope to kiss the feet of the peasants, right? I mean, Francis kissed the feet of the peasants, and he was an Argentinian Pope, but now all the stuff's coming out about the Nazis in Argentina, right?
For sure.
There's an intertwining here with the Nazis, with the money laundering and so forth, that can't be ignored. It's like saying the sexual compromise of the network cannot be ignored. And this Pope looked the other way during the sexual compromises in Chicago, and looked the other way of the sexual compromises in Peru, in order to have something on the Pope. They know they can replace him at any time. And I for one liked Francis. I think Benassi went wild on him. In terms of funding the spy organization through the Jesuit network, but we'll have to wait and see, how this Pope acts. But so far, it's not just TDS. He's in control of a very powerful spy network. Look at Carter Page, Jesuit, right? You can do a lot with a few really committed spies.
This is Pietro Benassi. We'll have to onboard you on all sorts of characters. He's right the assistant to the Pope. A lot of people would say oftentimes that like the handlers. I guess like the best word we could use maybe would be the handler. George would say like this guy's really the guy in charge, and he's kind of managing, the Pope, and the selection of the Pope is is for the cameras, for the optics, and this is the
PR
guy making the moves behind the scenes, and his family would have been making the moves for generations behind various popes.
He doesn't write the sermons. I mean, he doesn't.
Yeah,
he doesn't meet the people. But it's like Dulles and
Right.
Kennedy. Kennedy made the speech at the peace race at the UN and made the peace race at American University. But what ended up happening? Kennedy got his head blown off in the middle of the street at midday.
Mhm.
Right. The real power is the people like Alan Dulles, the people behind the scenes, the fixers behind the scenes.
Is his position there as a permanent representative to the EU? Okay, is that an elected position or is that like an installed position?
He's installed by the Prime Minister of Italy as far as running Italian intelligence, but he's also installed by the EU, and he also has diplomatic posts in Germany as well if he ever gets kicked out of Italy.
That's interesting.
Fascinating.
That was an
story.
interesting statement right there.
Last thing I'll say just on the Pope, and then we'll get to a few comments and call it a day here. You've already been out early today doing a show. George was at 6 a.m. his time. He was on with Awake Nation. So for folks who want to check out more of what George has been up to today, he was on with the Awake Nation early this morning. I do also want to say I forgot actually about these time crossovers. We went at the same time as McDuff today. So sorry for the McDuff audience if we stepped on any toes.
I tried to do noon, but you couldn't make it. So
it was my fault, and then I forgot. I forgot all about the crossover there. But even John and Marcia are live right now, so we do want to encourage folks when we end here to go watch John and Marcia and A.W. Finnegan. They got A.W. Finnegan on there, the great author of the Secret Agent book. So awesome stuff there, and we'll definitely have to change these times back, get back to the noon time. The thing is, when we go on Wednesdays, McDuff doesn't go at 11. I always forgot that's McDuff's day off. You know, he goes Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and not Wednesday. That's why when we go Wednesday at 11, there's no crossover, but Friday there is. So sorry, it's tough. All these different streams.
That's why they're recorded. You can, you can go
in.
back and pick up McDuff. And
Absolutely.
for people who don't know who McDuff is, he's the son of a FBI agent and also the guy who worked for Kennedy's Joint Chiefs of Staff, who said we're going to cast the CIA into 1,000 pieces. So he's done 30 years of really super deep dive Cold War research, and he's just an excellent source of material. And and I'll have to say this: no one has promoted John more than us. So for the troll trying to make trouble, we've had I can't count how many charrettes we've had in Cobb Island. At great personal expense to me. So we promoted McDuff, helped with the book, helped with the house, built the deck, did everything you can do without a building permit. And I think for the one project, we had to have a building permit. So we'll leave it right there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so just my last thought on the Pope is that this is a shot across the bow of J.D. Vance. Or even like Trump vis-a-vis J.D. Vance, that it's like, hey, Trump, you want to play politics with the Catholics. You want to pick J.D. Vance as your running mate because you think you can get the Catholics in your back pocket with J.D. Two can play at this game, Trump. We're going to make the whole Pope American, you think you can win people with your decision with J.D. So I feel like the J.D. camp, I feel like there's people in the J.D. camp right now who are looking at the chessboard and really thinking hard about their next move. Because
I think their next move was Chet Lemon, sending them a signal.
Oh, well, fair enough. But it's just like, if J.D. Vance is not selected as the vice presidential running mate, Robert Prevost is not selected as the new Pope, in my opinion. These are tit for tat games in the kabuki of global geopolitics, which is unfortunate for Catholics that their religion is on the forefront of geopolitics. But, surprise, surprise.
No good.
Surprise, surprise, don't be surprised.
Good.
It's only been a few hundred years of that being the case, right? But I don't know. What do you think about that, George? Am I maybe looking too far into it?
No, I think you hit it on the head. And it's no surprise to me that the Pope was dead within 4 hours after J.D. Vance visited.
Right. That's what sort of also makes you think like something's going on here with the J.D. camp.
Mass is going to be very interesting this weekend. Change the game for me.
Well, this is interesting.
In your head, everyone else.
I'm listening to this whole.
we waited for a Catholic. Mark was brought up Catholic.
Here I am.
Yeah. We waited for a Catholic to unload.
No, it's perfect time to choose, right? Dive into that.
Yeah, and then Aaron's Jewosity is always, and then
Jeez.
Mark's Christian scholarship. So we really have cornered the market here on the theological game board here.
I will be having a talk with Father Bob, so I'm about to blow his mind. We'll see what happens. Wow.
You might want to wait a week or two. I don't know.
Okay,
Let
I
it
need-
let
yeah,
it soak
just
in
let
a
it
little
all
before
sink
the
in,
father.
right?
You know, the father's
Yeah.
had a lot to do this week. I'm sure it's a busy week for any Catholics out there.
You
so.
know what? With all this talk about that, the Pope and everything, it should be interesting to see what I can bring to the table as far as my experience of, diving into Catholicism. So we'll see what happens. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's
I
interesting.
just was looking with. I brought up this Chet Lemon, this Detroit Tiger who passed away, and the fact that he was born in 1955, just like the Pope, and that he passed too. So and he was a healthy baseball athletic man here. So I'm like, maybe that's a sign to you, okay?
Well,
Because I was just I'm just in my way.
I have an X-ray that shows I was down to a quarter of a lung, so I came about as close to the white pearly gates as possible, and I'm happy to be out and back. And by the way, I wanted to say this: one of the things that we want to do at this neighborhood news studio there, it's not just a studio about us; it's a studio about making everybody a citizen journalist and everybody a writer. And I've written up, I guess you'd call them mini books or pamphlets. They're not pamphlets because they're more than that. They're 99 pages each, but I've written 50 of them. And I've written 550 Substack articles, something like that. And I want to do a writing clinic to get people to write a book before they die. And you never know when you're going to die. So you should start working on your book now. And we want to, and we can go all the way through in August to help you print your book, bind your book, and don't worry about your first edition not being too thick. You can always come out with a second edition and a third edition, but it's going to be good for your family. It's going to be good for your business. It'll generate business and leads for your business. It's going to be able to help you communicate your value to others, in your personal value and your business value. So I definitely want to get the book clinic going and for the summer. And get people writing their books. We did this with Macduff, and we started with rooms full of just stacks of boxes. Like you go into the worst nightmare storage unit ever,
Yeah.
and two of those, and then somewhere in there is the history of how Kennedy wanted to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces. We descended on it with 14 people. We had a big trash pile. We had a big sort later pile. We had buckets for every year, then we had buckets for each month, and then we photographed everything, and then we had John annotate everything, and then it all became, the book wrote itself practically because it was more sequentially oriented. There's a little who, what, when, where, how, and why, but that told the story of the Kennedy White House and how Kennedy was trying to bring in these FBI guys to break up the CIA. And I think he's working on a second book now. I'm not sure. But John's just one example. You guys did the Hopsicker book. Hopsicker wrote, I think, 7 books.
Yep, we are reading Welcome to Terraland here in the studio. That'll be our first, group book reading, kind of, I guess, book club. That's the best way to put it. Neighborhood News Book Club. So if you're out there in the audience and you have a copy of Welcome to Terraland, or if you were ever thinking of getting a copy of Welcome to Terraland, please do purchase it now and read along with us, because we'll be reading that book probably 2 shows a week, reading about 2, 3, 4 chapters a week of that. So over the course of the month of May, we will be book clubbing Welcome to Terrorland here at Neighborhood News. But yeah,
I think all of this is part of telling your story. It helps you refine your story. I have a system of 5 pictures, 5, 5, 5. I'm like Herman Cain, but I can't get to 9, so I just say 5, 5, 5. But I was a little kid born in the Huff neighborhood of Cleveland. You were both from Cleveland. Terry and I are both from Cleveland.
right? Yeah.
And then that's your first picture, and then you can use ChatGPT now to come up with your pictures, and you tell your life story in 5 pictures, and you can keep hammering on ChatGPT until it gets it right. But you could create, the terminal tower of 1983 when you first saw it, when your parents first took you down there. I remember when my brother first took me down to the terminal tower. And that tells your story. And very quickly you can tell your story and people get to know who you are. That's for your author section. And then whatever subject you decide, hey, I'm a Reformed Catholic. Here's my story as being a Reformed Catholic looking into the new Pope, and write a book about the new Pope with your research about the new Pope or whatever. But get it out there and then get to version 2 and then get to version 3. So, and then we did that with Addy Ads. I think you remember everyone said he's not going to write a book. He'll never write a book.
He's written dozens of books.
I think he's written a lot of books now,
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
But for folks who want to join this summer, certainly August will be our big citizen journalism camp, where everyone will be able to be coming together here, working together at the studio, writing books, doing the research. And even if you don't want to write your own book, there'll be someone here who needs help with theirs that you can join with them. So we're going to have the neighborhood news kibbutz charrette going on this summer in August. Certainly. And so let's do a few comments, George.
Yeah, let's do comments. Yeah.
Be on our way here shortly. Thank you all for being here. Certainly Dave Underdown, Ken Murphy, even the trolls. We even sometimes are appreciative that, any publicity is good publicity. Not really. I don't know. I guess the trolls would probably do better not having them here, but here we have Reckoning Truth. Thanks for being here. Pro-Kurdish MP and key peace negotiator Onder dies at 62. Familiar with who that is, George? Maybe not. We'll have to check in on that again later. Gaza, who are just innocent Palestinian civilians. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot there. So I guess we diving into the Gaza thing will have to be something for later. Mark, do you have any feedback, any commentary? Feel free to jump in on any of these comments. Israel will only have peace in Gaza when it claims rightful title to it and is found in the UN Charter of 1945. Well, some would say, right, it's going to be amazing. Some beautiful Trump resorts around in Gaza would be nice. These are comments from back when we were talking about the Ben Gurion Canal. But yeah, that's what Trump says, right? Deanna Butu, a self-defined international human rights lawyer, praised the late psychopathic Hamas hegemon Yahweh Sinwar as a hero and called Hamas a movement for freedom and for liberation. I think that's a connection to Pakistan.
We definitely differ. I mean, we definitely differ on with Ian Carroll, even though I have tremendous respect for Ian, that Israel, there is some prophecy here. I mean, Mark talked about it, and democracy is better than you can have as many wives as you want, under 12. Going back to the year 800 is not really where I think the Middle East should go. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be an economic alternative offered to the peace of Gaza, but when your elected government is a terrorist government, and probably the Israeli intelligence encouraged that to be such a radicalized government, I agree with the person here that Israel should just be done with it and just say Gaza is Israel. And we're not going to delineate it anymore. And we're going to build a pipeline, and we're going to build a more pipeline. There's, Ashkelon is already part of a pipeline, the first secret pipeline in the oil embargo, that Mark was talking about, right? So it's already been part of a pipeline. It should just be part of a new Suez Canal. And the free world shouldn't be depending, and Persian Gulf oil shouldn't be depending on what Egypt says, right? I don't agree with making it the Sunset Strip or the Las Vegas Strip. I think it'll be much more like Panama City. It'll be much more of a working town like Houston, because there's so much gas out there in the Mediterranean with the Leviathan, and there's so much oil from Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Persian Gulf that it's going to be more like a Panama City. But I think that's going to be better for the Palestinian people. Not just Jews, but the Palestinian people are going to be better off without Hamas, and better off that this is Israel.
The only losers are the radical Islamists in the rest of the Middle East who use Gaza as their, as their
Talking points. It's talking points.
point, or
right?
more than a talking point. I mean, more than just like they're, because I mean the deaths are real, the tragedies are real, but it's like you go back, you know, if you look at the population of Gaza before Israel was a country, there is like no population. Nobody was there. It was a muddy, swampy place with a couple thousand people. The reason anyone ever went to Gaza is because that's where you go to kill the Jews. It's not like a destination. It's not like a place that had millions of people and the Jews were, you know, oppressing them forever. These people kept coming and coming and coming because that's where you go if you hate the Jews and want to kill them. And there's a lot of people who want to hate the Jews and kill them. And there's a lot of people who want to send people to places for the purposes of Jew hatred and killing. So
there was a lot of sponsorship by the 7 nations that, and this is told in the story of the birth of the nation, for the 67 war and the 73 war, where, like you're saying, it was a staging area in order to attack Jerusalem and attack Tel Aviv. And again, I have some of my best friends, all right? I mean, a guy I talk to every day from Palestine, right? They want peace. They want economic opportunity. They don't want an open air prison. They don't want all the what we've had. It was a big mistake for the Jews to leave Gaza in the first place. They should have pursued this policy of everyone living together a long time ago. The Jews left Gaza, and then it did become an open air prison. It should have never have done that. And I think this perestroika, this glasnost that they're doing now is going to end up being the way it is. I wrote that in 2017 with the Braverman prophecy, and it is going to happen. So we just better just get used to it.
Here's a comment from Black Rabbit, a great viewer here. It's Neville Meyer. I am his daughter, Janice Meyer Kirkpatrick. He's a filmmaker, producer, family of artists. So Black Rabbit, Janice Meyer Kirkpatrick, and George, I think you've been collaborating with Black Rabbit here at the Churettes. She's been around for the California Churette recently and all sorts of great research community activities. So,
and don't sell yourself short, because she also was in the film The Gold, and she also was on the set for as a little kid at that time, or Shot at the Devil with Lee Marvin. So we got a lot of great South Africa stories where gold and diamonds coming. Gold and diamonds are coming. Just next episode.
It's an urban legend in Israel, even among the right, that the Grand Mufti Hajj Amin al-Husseini, leader of the Arabs in Mandatory Palestine, was the father of Palestinian nationalism. Interesting. I'll have to look more into that. Public shaming of using the term anti-Semitism isn't cool. I've experienced it all my life. I'm messianic now. Interesting. Yeah. Okay, that's like saying V.I. Lenin was the first Russian capitalist. Yeah. Black Rabbit. Okay.
Well, you know who put Lenin on the train in Berlin? Alan Dulles.
Oh, Alan Dulles. Yes, that's right. They sent him back with a train full of gold. It was like, here, Lenin, here's a train full of gold. This should be enough for you to take over Russia. If you need any more, call us. We'll get you some more gold. But isn't there like a Lenin gold train, Mark? Didn't you tell me that story?
There's supposedly right now is some stash of the Tsar's gold that has never been found. It's somewhere in Russia. It was the largest stash of gold in the world at the time, but no one knows what happened to the Tsar's gold.
Well, and John's dad, if you remember, there was these Russian defectors that came over from the old Soviet Union, and one of them was the sniper, which was Gulanowski. But Gulanowski was the last of the Romanovs, if you remember. They killed the whole family near what today is Ekaterinburg. But they killed the whole family, but they left the last boy in case they ever wanted to prop up the Tsar again, in case the bankers ever wanted to prop up the last Tsar. Gulanowski knows where it is. Gulanowski knows where the gold is stashed. I say it's near Ekaterinburg, because it would have been with the Tsarist loyalists protectorate guard. They would have carried it with them.
I'm booking the flight today. Any takers?
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, we could speculate, but
let's do this.
But there is a big history here with the Tsar and the Tsar's oil and Nobel and the Baku. Yeah, we'll get in that the next.
Yekaterinburg. I feel like I've heard you say this. This is just another one of those things. There's so much research to dive into here. I feel like I've heard Yekaterinburg, and I've never actually dove into it. But
Well,
yeah.
toward the west, this is where they did their bioweapons out that way.
Oh, Sverdlovsk. Yekaterinburg is Sverdlovsk.
Is Sverdlovsk. So
Uh-huh.
that's where they did their anthrax program, because they didn't want to do it in Moscow. They didn't want to do it in Leningrad, right?
Mhm.
But it had to be close enough to get scientists who would willing to work there. It couldn't have been in the middle of the Siberian, perm, out there. So Sverdlovsk was almost a secret city until they had the big 79 accident with anthrax. So yeah, the gold is going to be right around there somewhere.
I see. Tough place to get to.
Not for me.
Yeah, well,
I'm gonna get there.
we'll see. Zelensky, no doubt, is flying his drones there right now, I'm sure. Just trying to poke Putin in the eye, right? But here, we'll do this comment here. Looks like the new pope had relatives associated with the Mexican emperor. Interesting.
So
You know about that?
Habsburg? Was it the Maximilian?
Napoleon and the Maximilian. Yeah, I think they used those names to echo the fact that they had, royal lineage from the old Habsburg Empire when they tried to prop up. When was Maximilian? Right around the Civil War.
It was before Texas. So it was the
1840s.
Yeah.
1840s. Yeah. But again, this is the idea that, hey, this was our land before it was your land. And again, it doesn't matter what we say. It matters what they say in the radical churches, right? Where you have the radical clergy saying, hey, this is our land. The reason why you should blow up the oil refinery today is because the Pope asked you to do that. And then this is what we really got to watch, is industrial espionage is going to be the number one thing that to try to take out Trump. And this Pope, watch out. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's the Pope, but I'm saying that the Chicago mob is in Bronzeville like you can't believe, right? That's the whole steel industry that they control and the whole scrap industry they control. And this Pope comes right out of Bronzeville. I mean, it's kind of like, Straight Outta Compton. The new movie Straight Out of Bronzeville,
Prevost was also an active participant in U.S. political discussion during Trump's first term in 2017, retweeting a post from Palmo that said, calling refugee bans a dark hour in U.S. history, says the world is watching as we abandon our commitment to American values. Well,
and I just did a speech in Santa Monica, and the person who preceded me was from Iran and had gone through the naturalization process right there at the federal building in Los Angeles, and went through with 2,000 people. And there was one little door to get out of the naturalization. And they had the Democratic National Committee had their table there for signing people up to vote right next to as people were leaving. It was pretty funny. But she did it. And she runs the whole James O'Keefe thing, and she ran Children's Health Defense for Barbie Kennedy in Los Angeles. So why can't anybody do it? It's not that hard. There's 3 branches of government. There's, you just have to remember the 3 branches of government. You can pass a test.
Here, the Pope will bring back indulgences. What are indulgences? I've heard that before. Is that a joke?
Jesus's toothbrush, Jesus's sandals, Jesus's cell phone.
You could pay to have your sins forgiven. If you committed a sin.
What do you mean Jesus's toothbrush? Like you could buy Jesus's toothbrush?
Yeah, they used to have these relics.
Like there's a archaeological find kind of thing.
Yeah.
Luther got after the indulgences where you committed a sin, okay, but you could pay money to the church and have your sin forgiven. And
so money. I feel like you were saying this even on Awake Nation this morning, George, that you were like, this Pope's about to rake it in. Let's make some money here, boys.
Yeah, I mean, Mark is talking about every coin in the box in the pauper box that rings, another soul to heaven springs, right? You could pay indulgences to get your people that were in purgatory. Purgatory was this holding pattern place that could then spring people to heaven. Okay, but what I'm talking about, where Martin Luther really flipped out, he flipped out on that, but he really flipped out on selling Jesus's sandals and selling Jesus's, people were really selling these things. Jesus's bones was another thing that were sold over and over and over again. They took old cattle bones and so forth and sold them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We're playing with the live chat here. Terry's loving the live chat here. That this Pamela here. I'm a huge supporter of the Dreamer Act. The act allowed my 4 adopted children to live legally here in this beautiful country.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, the kids shouldn't be penalized here.
No.
And they can speak English just as well as any of the other kids. And I was on at the Senate carriage entrance, and I watched Mark Short and Trump try to get this act passed, and the number was 1 million. And I was talking to the people on the Schumer side that were negotiating it, and we were meeting over at that Aristocrat Cafe or whatever the hell it was afterwards. And they told me when it fell through, they told me, well, we never were going to do a deal. We just wanted to make Trump look like a racist. We just wanted to get into a negotiation and keep it Dreamer Act in the press and then make Trump look like a racist. We were never going to sign it. If Trump would have made it 10 million, we weren't going to sign it. We would have said we wanted 20. Well, that's disingenuous. And Trump really was trying to get the Dreamer Act through, and the number was 1 million. And I think Trump should still bring back the Dreamer Act because it would take the vitriol out of this Pope, and it would take the recruiting out, because they're recruiting the youth, young males, right? If you made all those young male citizens and removed all doubt that they were U.S. citizens, you would have a lot less anger in the Hispanic community. And they're gonna, I mean, look, they're the people who do all the work, right? I mean, they're the hotels, the construction,
You're exactly, that's correct. I mean, I was in Texas, Houston, Texas for 10, 11 years, and I had a chance to sit and talk with some people, and yeah, that's very true. They're very hardworking, and they do the work that we don't want to do anymore.
Right. Yeah, it's like,
yeah,
especially the maids and stuff in the hotels and all this stuff. I saw the Nabokov comment by Thermobsterful.
Nabokov's dad was the Tsar's last finance minister.
Yeah, there was a lot of because of the state was so oppressive in the 20s and 30s, that especially after Lenin died and they murdered Trotsky, they got into the Stalinist era where, total groupthink. And, so you had the, books like We and 1984 and all these other, Russian, they started using sexuality as a way of igniting the imaginations and creativity of the people. That's the plot of 1984. That's the plot of We, that, hey, you don't have to live this humdrum life existence. And so there's always these femme fatales in these Russian novels of the 20s where the guy is being, lured away to a conspiracy through some sexual, lure. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. Nabokov, of course, is Lolita, or was it Lola or Lolita?
It is the same Nabokov. Yeah, the one who wrote Lolita.
Lolita, yeah.
No, I was thinking that wasn't. I didn't put him up here.
No, he wrote Lolita, and he worked with Stanley Kubrick on the film version as well. Yeah.
Okay. Fascinating there.
He said, "It's not Stanley. You didn't do my book. you made it about you," but that's okay. Yeah.
Here, did we get this one? The Catholic Church placed itself in geopolitics from the get-go. No offense intended. Yeah, I think that was to my comment that like the last 3 popes have been highly political, and it's like, no, actually, like all the popes.
Well, some of our best Ospreys are lifelong Catholics, and they want the Catholic Church to be a great shining light like it has been at certain times. So we're just, in all things, if you're like a business executive, you work on the problems of your business, right? If you're a political commentator, you don't work on the things that are working great. You work on the things that can be improved. So that's all that's happening here.
Could you say that the Catholic Church is still kind of under deep state control?
Yeah, for sure. Ever since the NATO money and ever since the laundering of the gold, of the Nazi gold, I think it's like drugs. You get dependent on that money source. And then when it dries up, what do you do for money?
Well, I was thinking of the situation that the Pope's going to have here in the United States. Okay. They've been running real well on USAID funding their Catholic charities and things like that, but their churches are empty. They don't have, the collection plate like they had, 20 or 30 years ago. All they got is a lot of real estate. They got a lot of empty churches, and a lot of. So what is he going to do? Is he going to sell real estate to raise money? If the USAID money's come off, what are they going to do for money?
Well, I think there's an opportunity. I think Terry mentioned this. I think there's an opportunity for acts of grace. Acts of grace really are. Go ahead.
I was going to say, as far as people, flooding the gates of the Catholic Church. I mean, I guess in my hometown, I really don't know how to explain it, but I hear a lot of backlash about the Catholic Church and stuff, and I get it, but you should have seen the church Easter. I mean, it was packed, and I don't know if I'm just in a weird area or if it's just an extraordinary church, but I mean, the message that I'm receiving is good. And now we're kind of delving into the Catholic Church with all the Pope stuff. And I guess I'm not as defined to know all this, but I know that when I go to church, it's all about grace. It's all about forgiveness. It's all about good messages. And, I don't think we should overlook that aspect of it, but I know you're going to have people that dive into this and they're all about the Pope now. And what is he going to do? What is he going to change? Is he going to stay along the same lines that the last Pope was? I mean, it's all up in the air as far as that, but I can honestly tell you that none of this stuff has affected my want to dive deeper and to become a Catholic. So,
my brother's a lifelong Catholic, and so I'm speaking from a little bit of knowledge, and
yes,
from their whole family, all the kids Catholic, and they have 5 kids, and their kids have had 13 or 14, so they're keeping our population problem solved, and I want the best, for the church, and I like those acts of grace that Pope Francis did, and Pope John Paul was the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those get people back in, other than Christmas and Easter. Mm-hmm. I think what Mark's talking about is the Christmas Easter Episcopalians and the Christmas Easter Catholics.
Yes.
Well, I'm thinking of the empty churches, like when you go into Detroit or into Cleveland. Okay, these churches, from 100 years ago that are empty. And the neighborhood that was there, that was a thriving Catholic community, is gone now.
Yeah, Detroit is empty.
Well, sounds like there's waves.
Well, it's like it's called bait and switch. If you're going to go into you go into a Roman Catholic church, you expect to have Roman Catholicism and not to have social justice and non-scriptural things being thrown in your face. If you're going to be Roman Catholic, then be Roman Catholic, and that would mean having a Latin Mass, okay, and following the teachings of the church, and not trying to, well, because the other denominations are doing it this way, we should be more like them. This ecumenical movement of mishmashing the religions. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with the Pope as a righteous warrior for pushing back the Muslim horde and go back to the Knights of Malta and pushing Suleiman's navy and the St. Elmo's fire, and I'm all for that, because I don't believe the 800 religion, nothing. I mean, I don't want to be on yet another death list, but the whole kind of Muhammad thing was a guy who wanted to have a lot of wives, and he wanted to kill a lot of guys who had beautiful wives, and he ended up collecting a lot of wives that were 13, 14 years old. And and it really became a culture of, hey, that's okay. And what the CIA has done is said, that's okay. If you want that as a prince, as an Arab prince or UAE prince or a Qatari prince, and you want to kill everybody that has a beautiful wife and collect them all, you know, then that's okay. We'll support you in that. We'll have an intelligence service that'll get rid of those guys, and we'll have a thing where you have 25 different wives and 400. You know, how many did Osama bin Laden? He was the last of 51 kids, I think it was.
Wow, yeah.
So, and there was 35 of those were boys. So they want, that's not the way forward. That's the past. That's 800, and this is the whole battle. Right, with the Knights of Malta versus that 800 thinking. And I think this is a battle. This is what Mike Flynn would tell you. You know, these people that are, you know, Knights of Malta that are also U.S. generals, they think it's a religious struggle, you know, between Catholicism and Islam.
MAGA Catholics. We got
And one of these popes had a mass with the, you know, the head of the, I can't remember, some Muslim person. I can't remember who it was, but that's just kind of like a selling out. Like Mark says, you either are part of you're either in the program or you're out. You know, you can't be a transgender person over here and this over there and that over there and have all these woke things and not be about the Bible and the scripture, you know. And what you read about Gaza was pretty prophetic, you know. And I'm all for that kind of Catholicism. I want the Catholic Church to be strong if that's what if they're going to push back this kind of ignorance, and they're going to push, you know, the Jesuit order is very good. I know a lot of the folks in Jesuit high schools focusing on science and math and language and all this culture and so forth. Those are all great things. The Jesuit university system we have is a great university system. So those are all things I'm in favor of making stronger. So I know you're doing a lot of comments here as we go.
Yeah, just getting the last ones up there. Definitely a lot of folks are saying that church is pretty packed where they're from. So, I mean, maybe just communities changing, you know, moving out of the cities into the burbs. But definitely a couple folks here agreeing with Terry that the church is thriving. And Leanne here says my area also isn't the whole church. So there's definitely some packed churches out there, which is an interesting thing to hear. That's good. That's good to hear. Catholic Church is having a little bit of a revitalization, you might say, maybe, or who, you know.
Well, Monster is bringing up Buttigieg, and that's a classic example of somebody who's supposed to be Catholic. He went to Notre Dame. He was the mayor of South Bend, but then he's bringing in all this other stuff, you know, wokeifying the church. And I just think this is the time Americans need to, like Mark said, Americans vote with their feet and with their wallet. And if you wokeify the church, you're not going to fill the chairs, the pews. But if you reflect those old values, you remember, I've gone to different working class neighborhoods in Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Detroit, where the Catholics were the ones that were working in the automobile factory 6 days a week, and they would go to church on Sunday, right? And they're the backbone of a lot of our Midwestern cities. So anyway, I'll get off the. I see Michelle Sedona here, the Vatican banker.
Don't forget Michelle Sedona, the Sicilian IOR Vatican banker, well connected to the mob. He took the Nazi gold and facilitated the transfer of the Axis World War II stolen loot to South America and California. Wow, fascinating.
Well, and I think the Trump was talking about this release of the Argentinian documents, right, that talk all about this. And that was a slap, right, against the Pietro Manassis. And then they'd already killed the Pope, right? The Pietro had already done the deep sleep, the scarlet scarf or the velvet scarf. So he's dead. But then they put this guy in. So this is a war. This is a religious war as well as a political war.
I was reading a comment above about some gentleman that was going through to be a Catholic, and he changed his mind. And I've actually heard this. If you scroll up,
We'll have to get you
it's
with a
about-
computer here too,
yeah,
and you
it's
can
about,
click them.
yeah, wait,
Maybe
is
hard
it-
to find as
I
we
was
go.
confirmed Catholic, but stopped.
Oh, okay. I was confirmed Catholic, but stopped because it turned into no Jesus, pray to Mary, who is not omnipotent. It has to change to Yeshua training.
I just had this discussion with one of my friends, and
Mhm.
there was backlash about Mary, and I don't know. It's a personal relationship with God, so I mean I think that's where people fail themselves. Maybe when you have faith, it's a personal relationship with God, and maybe I just see all this other stuff coming into play, and there's always going to be people out there that bash you for what you do, and I'm willing to take it. You know what I mean? And it's weird that I've been going down this journey for this is a year and a half in the making of when I transition in life, and it's so crazy for me to see and read this right now, because I mean 2 weeks ago, I'm in Brunswick, Ohio. Shout out to Brunswick. But now I'm in Michigan, and my mind is being blown, and I'm listening to.
There's a
reading.
lot of
It's
concepts.
crazy. I know it's a journey, but I never thought you guys were going to bring this to the table. So
It's if they did elect a new pope yesterday. So it's more that it's in the news. Our conversations have great tangents. But
I just want to say thank you guys. Shout out to you. George,
yeah, awesome. People in the chat and everything, and don't
Well,
get.
I think this is every Catholic's journey. This isn't just your journey, Terry. Every Catholic has these same questions, and what Mark is saying is they want to get rid of this corruption.
Yeah, I mean that would definitely be a step in the right direction, and I mean corruption on all levels, right? I mean that's what we're essentially talking about, and the history of everything. There's corruption everywhere, and yeah, if we could eliminate that would make the world a much more beautiful place, wouldn't it?
We should probably leave it there because you get Mark and I started on the Virgin Mary. We're going to start talking Our Lady of Fatima, and we could do a whole nother show on Our Lady of Fatima. We can't go there right now.
You know what I do like about the Our Lady of Fatima is that it is sort of the Catholic Church's wing that said the Tsar should be bifurcating the Catholic Church and creating their own religion. That's all our stuff. And when the Tsar said we're going to create the Orthodox Church, then that cut half of our wealth out.
Yeah.
Mark knows this backwards and forwards, so I'll defer to Mark.
Well,
last comments here, guys. Yeah. Huh?
Well, essentially, the Orthodox Church moved from Constantinople to Moscow when the Ottomans took Constantinople.
Okay.
In 1453. But I think they don't have the Pope or their Archbishop, whatever. But the seat of the Rome, because Rome split, east and west, and the church split, also east and west, Rome and Constantinople. But Constantinople isn't Christian, and the Hagia Sophia is not a cathedral. But the Orthodox Church, kind of in exile, is based in Moscow. So,
and it was based in Odessa.
No, yeah,
right. One of the shrines, and the other big center is Kiev. So there's that whole. Will Ukraine be the next Jewish state? The continental Jewish state, and not a vassal state in the Middle East, or will it regain itself as an Eastern Orthodox? With Russia. So we got everything on the table here today this morning.
Absolutely. I think we'll leave it right there. Terry, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Everybody, I'm sure is excited to see a new face in the research community. And George, probably next Wednesday, try to get back to our Wednesdays next week. I'm sure you're on the move. You were in California, maybe still in California on the move out west. So hopefully we'll catch up on Wednesday. And Mark, everybody, thanks for being here. Everyone in the live chat, thanks for being here. Of course, do check out McDuff, and of course, do check out The Nation is Born that we highlighted. We were not able to play any sound from this show. We didn't, we just were showing graphics throughout, but please do check out The Nation is Born show here as well on YouTube. And thank you all. I'll play our jam on the way out. And thanks everybody for watching Neighborhood News.
Nice meeting you, Terry. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
we'll-
I can't wait to meet you in person.
We'll be
And
having Brett here soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. See y'all later next time at Neighborhood News.